A lot of electrical disturbances going on tonight.
Ghosts.
I hear background rumblings of sorts.
What are they telling you?
I don't know.
Kill the baby.
Whoa.
Kill the baby.
I have a baby.
It didn't say it had to be yours. I mean, it didn't say it had to be yours. It didn't say it had to be yours.
It did. Okay. Okay. Yeah, we don't have the heater blasting now. So what do we have? Background fuzz. I don't like it. You had something that you wanted to discuss on the podcast to the listeners because it touched your heart so deeply, and I'm going to talk the whole episode 1 or 2 words at a time. So you read Sleeping Beauties, which we discussed many times.
Yeah.
And you finished it.
I finally finished it
like a week or 2 ago.
Yeah, about a week or so ago.
And now you decided that it's time that you talk about it.
Well, I just kind of remembered.
Can I go therapist? How did it make you feel, Spencer?
It's funny you should mention that because one of the main characters is a psychiatrist at a female prison.
Oh, getting all up in them ladies' thoughts.
Yeah. But it was...
This is a wild wolf runs by. He was like galloping.
Yeah.
What are you doing, bro? Bruh. I don't know.
Trying to get in the bathroom. He's thirsty.
Yeah. Why don't you lay down? Or breathe very heavily. That's fine, too. Yeah, get nice and close to the mic while you breathe hard. Should probably let him back upstairs, I guess. Well, now that that's handled... So you read Sleeping Beauties?
Yeah, I read Sleeping Beauties.
By Stephen and Owen King.
Yes.
For those who are uninitiated.
I just feel like I should probably at least take a few minutes just because, we were always talking about on previous issues, making fun of me about taking forever to, make my way through it and stuff like that.
By the way, I can never make fun of anybody again when it comes to finishing a book.
Yeah.
Because, it's going to take me a while to finish one of the books I'm reading, which I don't want to talk about anymore for the time being. Also, we're going to bail, folks, on that IRC, the Jerusalem IRC. We're going to have an episode where we just bail. Because nobody wants to read any more of that.
Bailing out.
It's not that I'm not going to continue to read it. I just can't talk about it anymore.
Well, what you can do is once you read enough that you feel like you have something to talk about, you can always do another, you know what I mean? Or maybe when you finally finish it, like
6 months later.
6 months? I was going like a year.
I feel bad for any of the... I wasn't talking about finishing it, just getting to the chunk to talk about. I would feel bad for any of the listeners who wanted to keep up with the series on that. No, that's not going to be good. Anyway, Sleeping Beauties.
Sleeping Beauties. Not my favorite when it comes to Mr. King's work, but I do want to preface it by... Like, when I first started originally reading it, like, the first, 150 pages, I was going through it at a pretty quick clip. And then I got off of it because we needed to read some stuff for, either the podcast or something else. You know what I mean? We were having a guest on and we wanted to check out their work and stuff like that. So, it got kind of put on the back burner for a while. So then when I came back, that's where I had some difficulties until I got to about the halfway point. And once I got to the halfway point, things kind of start to turn a little bit and things kind of start to build more. You kind of get more that Stephen King suspense, and he whatever you say about the endings, he is at least very good at building up
to the ending.
To the ending, pulling it off, that's a different story.
Do you know how they wrote it? Like, who wrote what or anything like that? I'm
not sure. I would have to say, this is just my opinion and thought on it, that Stephen King, or they might have came up with the idea or whatever together, but he kind of outlined and came up with kind of the big bits and had him do the majority of the writing.
So Owen probably did the writing, you think?
I think so, and I just say that because this is kind of deals with one of the tropes that Stephen King deals in with a lot of his stories of dealing with a small town and everybody in the town, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, not everybody, but a big ensemble cast. And normally Stephen King does a really good job with those, even if they're little minute characters.
Mm-hmm.
you can find, be like, there's interesting things, or he does cool stuff with them that kind of stick with you. And I didn't feel that as much with this book. And there was also times where I had to be like, they would bring up a character and I'd really have to stop and I'd have to think, be like, who? He was doing that. Oh, okay, I remember who that is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I should have known, because in the beginning of the book, there's like at least like, I think like a 2 or 3 page of like a list of names.
Yeah.
And like who they are, like sheriff, husband of her, wife of, like, that son or daughter, like, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's why I would say it's probably more Owen King on the writing end of it. But I also too, because I feel like that the pacing was kind of off, and not like moments and scenes and stuff were fine, but like just the big picture overall pacing,
overall narrative.
Because like I said, like that first half of the book is just the women falling asleep, because what happens is like this pandemic going around. Well, anytime that a female falls asleep, these like webs stop forming around her face and make a cocoon, and they fall asleep.
Right. And
if you try to remove it off of them, or they freak out, get all like Hulkish kind of strong, and can like rip people's arms off, and takes multiple bullets to put them down and stuff like that. It's called Aurora. I think that's what it was called. It's been a while. So it's like the first like 300 or so pages, just like dealing with like all the women kind of slowly going to sleep, and the stragglers staying up, and like it was just like, okay. But then once like the majority of the women fell asleep, you find out like, hey, there's like other town that they're in, like in this other place. It opens the story up more.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like they could have done something better with that, or maybe tried to introduce some of that stuff earlier on in the story to just kind of keep you in like, okay. And then also too, like, you can only do so much reading about people trying to not fall asleep before you're just like,
okay, he starts One of the main complaints I saw about that book, like the repeated complaints on different reviews, was that the feminist themes were too heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Was any of that off-putting to you? Because normally you don't really care about that stuff, so.
Yeah, I mean, like I could see instances where you could get that from, because it does deal with like a lot of like, because then it's like once all the women on the planet fall asleep, but the majority of them, because like there's some people who have like insomnia and things like that, who don't fall asleep.
Well, what's your official rating out of 5?
Out of 5?
And I would say you're comparing this to other Stephen King books.
Yeah, I'd give it somewhere between like 2.5 to 3.
Ooh, a pooper.
Somewhere right around. And then too, like it's a 700 page book. It's a big clunker. Like I was reading the hardback too, so.
Will you just admit that it wasn't very good?
Like I said, it wasn't my favorite. Somebody else might read it and like it. I don't want to say that it's terrible, that somebody else might not read it, because somebody else might read it and they might enjoy it more than I did.
Well, just from a story perspective, did you like the story?
Yeah, I thought the
because it sounds interesting.
Yeah, the plot and the idea is kind of cool. Like, and that's why I thought like made it like how I was talking about it was writing, because that also kind of seems like a very Stephen King-y kind of idea or premise. But then just kind of let his son do the majority of the work.
See, when I read In the Tall Grass, where Stephen King and Joe Hill
I
collaborated, that was one of those ones where it was like, I couldn't tell who wrote which or how they wrote it. It could have came across as either one of their stories, which was cool. But I don't know anything about Owen King's writing, because I think he might have 1 or 2 books out and some short stories.
Yeah, and then I think he did like a graphic novel, I think.
Yeah, so it's hard to say what his exact style is, or even if he has an exact style, because Joe Hill's he's prolific enough, I feel like he would have his own author voice, whereas Owen Hill, I think that's kind of why he wrote the book with Stephen King. It was probably his book, but he couldn't do it on his own.
Yeah.
Especially because it's 700 something pages.
Or maybe it's also too like he could have done it, but maybe it's like who's gonna, they might have realized like, hey, who's gonna buy it without,
Yeah.
and his dad probably, tried to help him out by saying that he'll, help co-write it. And he might have helped him out. He probably did help him out, like, try to bang out, like, story ideas.
But I don't think he did the bulk of the writing or anything by any means.
I wouldn't say so, no. In my estimate.
Well, like, you brought up the side characters and stuff, and you kind of not, who the hell was that guy again?
Yeah.
Well, any Stephen King I've read, even with a lot of characters, he makes every character, whether it's even just their name, like Roland, or usually it also goes along with their character traits, they're memorable enough that even if they're only in one chapter, if they were to pop up again, you'd be like, yeah, I know who that is.
Well, and a lot of times, especially with Stephen King's work, like that one character that you see that one time in one book, there's a chance that you might see them just pop up in another book, maybe just for a scene, and you're like, oh, hey, that's that person. Like, if any of these other people popped up in any other work, I'd be like, wait, who?
Who was it? So, that's Spencer Church's official Sleeping Beauties review.
Maybe I'll have to try to...
It's a dollar store buy.
Yeah.
Is that what you'd go with? If you saw it on the bargain rack, you'd tell somebody to pick it up?
Yeah.
Or if your door won't stay open?
Yeah, or if you, maybe find that you can, they might have like a Kindle sale or something, and you can get it for a couple bucks or something. Oh, I definitely say, any Stephen King fans probably has read it or will, read it. Though, it does make me want to maybe try to track down some of the other stuff that Owen King has written, just to see maybe he has a better writing style by himself. Maybe they clashed a little bit or something, you know what I mean?
That's possible too. I mean, collaborating with somebody's hard, and if they don't have the same writing style or similar enough, or if this is just the chemistry.
Well, and also then they also had the added factor of it being family members.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother layer of... I don't think that was a good chapter, but I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, because especially if it's like his son that came up with the chapter.
Or even if he was just, if Owen was just like, hey, Dad, I don't think this is maybe your top.
Then how do you tell your dad?
Yeah. Where, like, we've always talked about writing something to where I'd be like, Caleb, I don't, what is this?
It's dog shit.
Yeah.
Look, we need that scene. It's crucial to the element. It's just a girl bouncing her boobies for the whole page or the whole chapter. Like, yes, but there's a meaning behind that. We just have to wait till the end. I don't know. See, we always get off topic.
Yeah.
At least it was boobies this time, not wieners.
Yeah.
That's always a good. Or the butt stuff. That's the downfall of DPW. All the butt stuff talk that you bring up every episode. So yeah, we should probably end this cold open and get into talking about whatever the topic is that we'll come up with. And
we exactly know what it is.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're not going to come up with it during this intermission. Anyway, here's some music. You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Bangalore Buggy Buster Church.
Oh, you dirty bastard.
I don't know. I don't know if Bangalore, I already forgot what I said. It's a city in India or a town, or it was on the map in India. I probably mispronounced it, but that's what you are, the Bangalore Buggy Buster. Busting buggies, left and right. To those not from the Pennsylvania area or this part of Pennsylvania, a buggy is not like a horse and buggy. It is a shopping cart. Spencer loves them. Big, long history with... Anyway, before we get into this episode, which I completely forgot to look at the topic during that intermission, so, yeah, we might have to hit a pause button here sometime. You mentioned Bookcast?
Yeah, we were talking about, the other day, off how we were figuring out if we wanted to try to do a bookcast or a
I have a couple things for you.
Or a book club.
They can't see me rubbing my hands together like a villain.
It's very sinister.
Look, I was going to suggest one thing, but now I think that actually this would be better to get British Ash involved in. And that's Robin Hood.
Okay.
Read the Robin Hood stories. Because I've been listening to the Robin Hood Myth and Legends podcast episodes.
Yeah.
And I like those ones a lot, so I kind of want to read Robin Hood. But I don't think that'd be good for the bookcast. I think we'll do one with him or something if he's in it, because that's British stuff. So I think he'd be interested. Because, he has to be off of King Arthur at some point. He can't just talk about King Arthur and Shakespeare for 20 years. He has to...
Well, I was just gonna say my immediate concern is that Robin Hood is gonna fall into the same King Arthur. That'd be fun and kind of cool.
To be fair, we read the Steinbeck King Arthur tales and not the original.
Do you think that would have been better?
No, I think it would have been worse. The language. Anyway, the other one. This was what I thought for the book cast because old Jangles Prime, our number one listener. I think he's the most vocal listener on Twitter. Anyway,
and that book makes you number one. I mean,
yeah, Jangles Prime. Just so you know, you do have lots of competition on our actual website because we have a lot of people who hit that like button on there all the time. Every episode they listen to.
Gotta step your game up.
And we got a lot of UK listeners. A lot of Canadian listeners.
Or just people outside of the U.S.
Yeah, we have a lot outside the U.S., but I forget Canada's weird because there's always a good chunk of Canada. There's 8 listeners that are from unknown Canada. It's what the fuck is unknown? Is it just a fucking igloo somewhere? Or is it up north, where you can't even traverse by helicopter? You have to swim across the frozen blocks of ice or something? What was I saying? Oh, the book. Because old Jangles Prime brought this up where it was on some meme or something I shared, but he read it and he enjoyed it. I think it was it was a list of books nobody ever reads or something.
Oh, I saw something about that, yeah.
The Hobbit. I looked it up because I thought that was one of them 8,000 pagers.
No, the Hobbit's pretty small,
isn't it? It's 300 something. It's doable.
Yeah.
Though we did talk. No. I got other things. That could be a book of the month.
Man, okay. We have many things, many plates spinning.
I don't know if we talked about this on air or if this was an off air. I feel like it was during the writing session when we weren't writing. We mentioned maybe the next few bookcasts be short story collections because it was when we did Conan, it was easier to do the Conan short stories versus when we did Dracula because we
could do 1 or 2 depending how big the stories are.
Stretch the episodes out and it'd be a little more enjoyable. So, short story collections.
Other than just being, what happened in this? I think this happened in this chapter, and that happened in that chapter, but I can't remember because I actually read it a week ago.
Yeah, that was our problem with Dracula, especially with just the language of that, is we would get in a lot of the repetitive nature of that book. We would get into the, okay, we're going to record the book cast this week, even though it's been a couple weeks. They'd be like, what the fuck happened? I don't remember what chapter that happened in. We were all over the place, sounded like idiots. So, short story collections. I've been in the mood for fantasy, man.
I've noticed.
Well, I just finished. I only took 2 days to read it. It was not a very long book, 100-something pages, but Michael Moorcock's unfortunate last name, Michael Moorcock's.
Or not.
He's British, I don't know. But Michael Moorcock's Elric of Melibene series. I've been wanting to read that for a long time, but as anyone who listens knows, I'm not a hard fantasy reader. And, even though I wanted to read it, because I even had paperbacks of that as a kid I got just because the covers were cool. Those old school 70s or 80s covers. But I never actually read them. Or if I did, I don't remember. It might have been one of them things that, you just don't remember reading. But I decided to read the Elric of Melibene finally just because I've been reading Alan Moore's Jerusalem and good Lord, every 10 pages I get through, I read a novel. Yeah. That's not that book. I'm not even joking. It's I get through 10 pages of that and then I treat myself to a whole novel as a break. And I've read 5 novels now. Well, a couple were short story collections that we got off those indie authors. But anyway, I really, really enjoyed it. I realized my problem with hard fantasy, which was my problem getting into the Elric of Melibene series, is just the names.
Yeah.
It's not because I really, really enjoyed his writing style. It reminded me of Robert E., which is one of his inspirations, Robert E. Howard's Conan, which I really enjoyed those, the writing style of that. Now, the Conan stuff was cool because the names weren't really too far out there. Yeah. A lot of them were almost like caveman, like Conan. That's something like a, caveman kind of name. So those were cool. But these are all names with multiple Y's and stuff. And you're just once you get to the point where you're I'm just going to make that my own name.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Or my own pronounce. There's one guy who was why, a bunch of letters. I was just you're York now. You're just going to be York. That's your name. So anytime I see it, he's just York. Which is a habit I've broken. I used to do that with a lot of the Japanese novels I would read. But I broke that habit because then anytime I see a Japanese name, I'm you're Kinshi. That's not how you pronounce that at all. It's not Kinshi. Stop saying that. So I don't do that anymore. But I will with the hard fantasy because fuck.
Yeah.
You can't look. How do you look up the pronunciation of that? Like actual Japanese names, you can look up. Fucking made up fantasy names, you can't.
I'm sure for like that book, you could probably find the pronunciation.
I looked.
Really? There's no like website or YouTube page or like super.
Well, like the Molybdenate, which is the city, I learned how to pronounce that, which I mean, it's it could be multiple things, but you get close to the pronunciation by reading it, like phonetically. But I just looked up a couple YouTube videos, and Elric of Molybdenate, because it's Melibone with the accent or something. But the city or the country they're from, or either I forget, either Molybdenate is the city or the country, and then the other one's either the city or the country, like the country and the what. I'm making no sense. It's like Immer or something, like something fucking like a bunch of like why I am a bunch of R's. I don't know. George R. Martin probably wrote it. Immer, but which I'll have to show you the map. And I'll just be like, Spencer, pronounce any of these countries. And you're like, what? As far
though, in the defense of that map, you could probably do any map, and I'm just like, I don't know these words.
Just a map of India or something, you'll be terrible. I would like to do, if we could find like I don't want an indie author fantasy, even though like a lot of the book casts, I think it's the book of the month we usually do the indie stuff. So I don't want an indie author collection. I want an actual fantasy collection. I have a classic fantasies book over there, but I don't think you could get that at Barnes & Noble anymore that I've seen.
Yeah.
And that's very long, so we should find a solid one. Just order it. I would like to get not classic fantasy necessarily, but something kind of that vibe. I don't think modern fantasy too is what turns me off. Is I think it's kind of boring. It's too much just like elves and fairies.
So are you thinking like something around like the 50s and 60s? Like
yeah, like if we get something that had like a short stories by Michael Moorcock and what other prominent fantasy writers of the time, around, that would be awesome. Again, this is it's up for debate. Yeah. We're democracy here.
Yeah,
something. So we have Robin Hood.
All right.
Some kind of fantasy collection. The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to throw into the mix?
Well, I guess like I've always been saying off air, and you don't like it because you hate planes. Is that
I don't know. I don't. Go ahead and let's say your piece.
The Stephen King short collection that he edited. He wrote a story, but he edited it, and that has its short stories all that deal with like planes and stuff like that, horror things on planes. And I just thought it might be a good way to find some new authors. But I mean the short stories we could also then do like rotating themes like science fiction and horror and stuff like that. I was just wondering because you were bringing up Neil Gaiman's Norse Mythology.
That's another one I thought of. Yeah, I forgot about that. The Norse Mythology I've been wanting to read.
And then I was just wondering because I was talking about how I was gonna dive into Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere,
yeah.
But I didn't want to do that if we were gonna have, if we were gonna try to, do an episode on.
You don't want to double up on the Gaiman.
Yeah, or just any book, really. Like, you know what I mean? I don't, if I can help it, unless if it's like short stories because it's easy to kind of, shuffle back in between right. those. But
well, the Norse mythology is short stories, but they're myths. Like Norse myths, so I don't know if that satiate my fantasy lust though, because it's and also that I don't know how much we could talk about that though, because just thinking about that in retrospect, it's like it's all just Loki and Thor, and I mean it's not like it's gonna be varied. The stories are gonna be the same people and the same thing. I mean, I guess the Conan stories are like that, but the adventures were different. I don't know how different. I don't know. I'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
So that's on the drawing board. If we were like a prominent podcast, we could have fans vote on this.
Yeah.
But like the way our shit goes, if the fans aren't interested, they don't vote at all. But they'll vote or something, or just react to something very stupid. It's like, hey, what's your favorite type of butter? Do you like lard? Do you like butter? What's your favorite lubricant? Like,
can you believe it's not butter?
Yeah, margarine. Do you like olive oil? Do you like avocado oil? And just pure fat. Yeah. And then you go downhill and then everybody reacts to that. But then you're like, hey, I'm writing a book series. What would be a great idea? Choose out of these and get 2 votes. Also, this is not related to anything, but I asked earlier just because I thought about it on the old Twitter. So I'll ask you this. Church. That's your real name?
It's not.
Really? Oh. It's Abaganza. Oh, okay. It's actually a 2-part question, but I'll ask the first part now.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm just going to put you on the spot, too. What is a word that I'll just say dislike. I won't say hate, but I hate them. What's a word you really dislike that you do not incorporate into your writing because you just don't like it?
Oh.
And I had a couple responses that were interesting. One guy said looks or looked, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, when I edit my work a lot of times, I actually go back and do change that.
Yeah.
Change it to either glance or something else, or what I would really like to do is just change it so you see the person looking without saying they're looking,
Yeah.
Like, oh, he turned his head and his eyes widened or something like that. Somebody else had another one, too. He actually reads audiobooks or he's like a narrator of sorts, and he said one that a lot of narrators hate is grasped, which I say it out loud. It's actually like, oh, yeah, I can see how that'd be annoying to say it. Just grasped.
Yeah, that could be difficult.
He grasped the girl's hair. Like, it's one of them words that doesn't actually, it reads better than it sounds in real life.
I don't know if I have words that I don't like. I know I have, like, words that I use too goddamn much.
Well, that was the second part of my question is, or do you have, conversely, do you have a word that you really love or like that you always put into your work, maybe even too much?
Yeah, I know I do, but I can't
think of it on the spot. Yeah,
I can't think of any. That's always something I notice as I'm writing. I'm just like, I'm saying the goddamn same thing. I'm saying the goddamn same thing. I'm saying the goddamn.
That's when I at the end will do the Control F, search, and I'll type in that word, and I'm like, I use that word 14 times. Why did I use that word 14 times?
One page.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible when you come across those.
It's not necessarily a word, but I always struggle with on how often to use characters' names. Like, yeah, even if it's just like one character. Like, on how often, should I mention it at least like once a paragraph, or
depends how many characters you have involved. If it's just that character, I feel like it just I'll add the name whenever it might make it sound a little better, but for the most part it'll just be he or she or whatever. And then you just throw in the name to break it up. But like in your Space War story, which you can read on DPW, I didn't post that yet. Fuck. That was supposed to be this weekend. I forgot. Sorry, Spencer. I'll get to it. It's done. But anyway, your guy was Officer Smith. So, like he was running down and he got fucking blown up and he got shot at. And then, then Smith fell. Like you just throw in the Smith very casually here.
Yeah.
But then when you introduce like your other character, O'Brien, well, now you have to use it more because you can get very confused. Like that's one that will trick you too. Because have you ever reread something and you'd be like,
who's talking?
Well, even besides the dialogue, like you just have a paragraph where there's some action or something, but then it's like a double he. So you could have like Smith grabs O'Brien or something, and he said, "Oh, he grabs him and pulls him up." But then if you you're reading that, you could be like, "Well, wait, he grabbed who grabbed who?" Like it could just get confusing. Or this is one of those things, sometimes you just overthink it. Yeah. And it sounds confusing because you keep reading it, but it might not actually be.
You know what I hate? What I always hate trying to figure out if I need is like the double that.
I don't do that. If I had and that sometimes they'll come in. And what I will do is just find a way. I'll reword the whole sentence. I hate that.
Destroy the whole paragraph.
Yeah, or the worst one, and this is one you'll hear people say in real life a lot, doo-doo. Like, that's something I do.
Yeah.
And like, ooh, you do, huh? No, don't do the doo-doo.
I bet you do.
No doo-doo. So I try to obviously avoid those. The had one, sometimes you could work around if you could do apostrophe D, like add on something like, instead of
had,
he had, you could put he'd had or something along those lines. Going to the words, for whatever reason, I know there's a lot of words I like and a lot of words I dislike, but I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, but I do know there are words I don't use because I can't spell them.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Medieval. I always think it's MID, not MED, and then it's like MEDIEVELA. There's too many. Like, there's too many ways you could spell that.
I keep on meaning to like look up and get like a thesaurus app on my phone.
Yeah,
because that's another thing where like I know like I keep on maybe saying the same thing or using the same word to where I could like. You know, if I'm talking about a fire, it's like I keep on saying fire where I could throw in flame somewhere.
Yeah.
Or, you know, either, you know...
jazz it up a little or just yeah, you know. I do that a lot with... But
again, like, that's a lot of first draft stuff.
Yeah.
You know. You're just trying to get the story out there and then you can try to... Make it better after.
There's a couple words I struggle with because I can't find a suitable replacement sometimes. Is ground is one because
it's like
if you're outside, you don't want to use floor.
Yeah, because it's not a floor.
Yeah, so you can say ground or earth. But you know, how many times can you use those if it's, especially what if it's a different plant? It's not earth, and you can't even say earth. Soil, grass. Like you have to start adding descriptors to it, either on the grass, the concrete, you know, things like that. So sometimes that muddies it up. Guarantee is another word I never fucking use because I can't spell it. I don't know why I can't spell guarantee. Is it guarantee? Like I always forget. Like I always wrote it right down. I was like wrong. Like restaurant's one of those ones too. I'm better at it now, but I still like restaurant. Like why is there these letters don't make sense? Like
English hard.
Why is it not restaurant? Or is it restaurant? Not, I think it's restaurant. I don't know. I always fuck it up, and I always like write it 4 times before I get it right. And it's really bad when my Wi-Fi connection is shitty, so the squiggle does not come up.
Yeah.
Or if I'm writing it by hand, I'm like, fuck. I don't know why. Like, there's just a handful of words that no matter how many times I use them, no matter how many times I learn the spelling, it just does not stick.
I know, like I use grab a lot.
Grab. Well, I think that's like that guy's problem with look. Maybe that he just because I asked him, but I don't think. Well, I'm not on there now, so I don't know. But I don't know what his explanation is for hating that word. But I assume it has something with overuse.
Yeah.
Or it could just it could be a writer. You know, there's better ways to say somebody's looking without saying they're looking. Like show they're looking. That is one actually though I do fuck up a lot is the look because I'm always like, oh, he's glancing, he's looking, he's
glaring,
staring. Staring's another one. I'm like, why is this guy staring so much?
Observing.
See, that's when you get into the weeds because now you're observing, you're scanning. Are you a robot? Like, are you a Terminator?
Well, it depends. If you're looking at that ass from far away.
But sometimes it just sounds ridiculous. He observed that ass for a long while. Like, you're a fucking creep. I don't know, man. I just don't know.
If you're writing a creep character.
I guess. Yeah, sometimes the synonym or just another word it does not work in that situation. You know, it's just because I as I've gotten better at writing, I've learned that the bigger word is not always the better word. Usually it's the worst word. Usually the best word is the first word you come up with, but then that's when you get the repetitive words, you gotta change them up. So then it's the second best.
Or
third best.
You'd know, have maybe a good idea, with us previously talking about Hemingway, did he reuse words a lot? Because he had a very kind of like simple writing style and stuff like that. Did he use like the same phrasing or words a lot, or would he change them enough to?
I would say, yes and no. His writing style was almost observational, as in he would talk about like a guy fishing and he'd be like, you know, the waters were blue, the pebbles beneath were brown, and he would throw in a couple bigger words, but not, you know, real big. But it was always like he would describe things very simply, and it was almost like brush strokes on a painting. So if you just have each brush stroke, that's all you're seeing is that line. But once you read the whole thing, it actually makes a picture.
Yeah.
Which, that's what most writing is, but it's in its most simple form versus if you have somebody like a Fitzgerald who uses all these big words and stuff. Well, now it's like almost like each sentence is multiple brush strokes, you know? It's like painting different lines on one thing, almost like cross stitching.
Yeah.
You know, that like shadowing. But Hemingway's, it's just like one line at a time. So he he could be like blues, like a word he uses a lot. You know, the sky's blue, the water's blue. But the way he writes is so simple that it fits. You understand?
Out of place or anything.
Yeah, you understand that. That's the word that needed to be in that sentence.
The sky is blue.
Yeah. Whether that would work for somebody like us, probably not. If anybody else, because that was his original style. But if somebody else tried to do that, then you're just ripping off Hemingway.
Yeah.
I would say Cormac McCarthy's like that too. Except for he doesn't use commas and fucking periods and shit because he's a douche for some reason. I can't judge. The only thing I read was The Road. Need to read his other work to judge his also simplistic writing style.
Well, I don't know if this fits in with the episode or not, but I figured that we're just kind of doing on kind of pet peeves that gets us for storytelling, and this thing, it's nothing you can really do about it. But do you ever kind of wonder? And maybe you notice it on the stories that aren't that good, but like, and on the good ones, you give it a pass because it's there. But like, whenever it's a story of somebody telling somebody else the other story, but like it's super detailed, and it's like it's in no way ever how I would like tell you a story. I wouldn't be like,
it throws you out of the actual story because it's like the old trope of the super smart kid on TV. Who is like supposed to be a 6-year-old, but the way they talk is like an adult. Or you see that in comics a lot too. It's like, or also in books, I guess. It's like, why is the kid character talking like an adult? That's not how they talk.
That or like the other kind of like thing I can kind of compare it to is like whenever you're watching like a movie or show and they go, well, back then, and they do a flashback and it's like they showed, but it's like, how is the guy telling the person about the past, tell him about things that he didn't know about because he wasn't there for it, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, like a whole scene will unravel with two characters that aren't that guy, and he's nowhere there watching it. Like how that doesn't make any sense. That could throw you out. But yeah, I know what you mean because
no, granted, if it's good, you don't care because you're engaged in the story and it was entertaining and stuff like that. I think that's something you might, like I said, you might find out on something that might not be as good, and you want to like kind of nitpick or something. But
I always do. Like that actually is one thing that used to bug me a lot. I don't read a lot of stories that incorporate that so much anymore. At least maybe I just don't notice. But yeah, when you have like a character talking about, like, I remember when I was a young kid, I was walking through a field. The plants, they were dry and they were like old tobacco spit brown, and they just started adding like these descriptors. Like, who fucking tells a story like that? And why is the story completely linear? Just like, every moment, every beat. And most people don't, like, just a random person telling you a story usually it's like, by the way, he also did I get from a storytelling perspective, you don't want to bog it down, but like again in TV shows and movies, they can't have the characters throwing in a bunch of likes and and like that slows it. They don't even say hello usually on the phone or goodbye. They just click. So I get it, but it can throw you out of the story, especially when it's like, why is this old prospector all of a sudden fucking Mark Twain here with the way he's speaking?
But again, like I said, though, it's like, though it's kind of hard. It's like, what can you really do to change against that? Like that's just kind of like one of those things that been like kind of grandfathered in or set in stone of writing. Like, it's, what are you gonna...
I'm pretty sure John Steinbeck is really good at doing that, like the story within the story. I think Mark Twain as well. It's a tough one, but there's some authors you'll read, and I say I think because if John Steinbeck does that, he does it so well that I don't even realize like you're being told a story within a story, and it doesn't seem unnatural.
That's even kind of like, if I remember correctly, I think that's like how, like Shawshank Redemption kind of rolls out. It's like Red's telling you the story about Andy Dufresne, and it's like, now some of that, they can know because you're, everybody in a small area, people talk, you get to know about people. But like, if you think about it, it's like, how would he know some of those things? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then
like him pounding a rock against a pipe. How do you know he pounded a rock against a pipe?
Yeah.
You weren't there.
Because at the end, it's not like, oh, they met, and so you could be like, how do you get out? Oh, I banged a rock. I waited till it was thunder. But no, at that point in the at that juncture of the story, you led to believe that they haven't met.
Exactly.
After he got paroled.
You ever find any trouble in your own work like that?
I mean, probably if I looked.
Well, that goes back to our narration discussion. The discussion we had before about like who's the narrator. I don't know what episode that was on. Probably multiple ones, but that's still like the story I'm working on now. I'm kind of struggling with I'm just gonna let it pass and just write the story. But if you went by who's telling the story, nobody's telling the story. It's it's just the story. That's one that always trips me up though, because especially when I read a lot of like first person stories. Like the novel I'm reading now is first person, so it's like it's so much easier because that guy's just telling you the story.
Yeah,
it gives you so much more leeway versus if it's third person, because then do you go old school style with letters and newspaper clippings and like who's telling the story, or do you just do unseen narrator who's just telling you the story, like you're just reading the story? Or I don't know. That always tricks me. That's one of those things you overthink too much. It's probably not important. Speaking of narration styles, have you started reading Coin Locker Babies yet?
No.
Did I get that to you?
I just brought back a book that I just finished.
You just read that in like 10 minutes?
Yeah. It took like a day and a half.
Day and a half. What book is that? Do you want to announce it on the podcast? It's one of our indie authors, actually.
The No More Tales to Tell by Thomas Moller?
Moller?
Moller.
Muller, double Ler.
Yeah.
You said you enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So, good job, Thomas. Clap. Don't be a fucking jerk. Clap.
And you read... Did you finish? What was it? Neon...
Neon Druids? I finished that last week. Like I was telling... Oh, what was his name? The editor, and he had a story in there. I.E. Neverday? Sounds right.
Yeah.
I really like the anthology. My problem with it is actually just more of a personal problem, not so much on the story, the authors or anything. Is a couple of the stories I didn't like and didn't finish because like there was one that was like a fairy story, and I think another one was kind of similar. It was like a harder fantasy, like swords and witches. I don't know.
It just wasn't your taste.
That's all it was. It had nothing to do with the writing or anything like that. It just like some of the stories, they just didn't appeal to me. The Neon Druids is like a Celtic, kind of like a mythology. Like it has a lot of Celtic folklore and stuff involved in like each story. So some of them were like, a lot of them were urban settings and stuff, and it was really cool. Some were more like horror themed. But the only ones I didn't really care for so much were like, again, like the fairy fantasy type, because that's just not what I read.
Yeah.
So I would urge all readers who are interested in that kind of stuff to pick up Neon Druids. It's a very quality book. I think I gave that 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. I forget on Goodreads. I probably gave it 3 because I didn't read some of the stories. Yeah. But I might have gave it 4 because I did really enjoy the stories that I did read. I think it was only maybe 2 or 3 tops that I didn't read in there. So like I said, I like that. I read through that pretty quickly. I'm reading a Haruki Murakami book now, so that'll probably be what I'm going to be reading on the plane come Monday, and I'll bring I'm thinking Yukio Mishima's Decay of an Angel I'm going to read, because that's the last book in that tetralogy I've been reading through, and so far it's been like 1 or 2 every year I've been reading. There's 4 books, but it's like they're not, well, a couple of them are, like 1 or 2 of them are fairly long, but the other ones aren't. A couple hundred pages, but it's just like one of those reads that kind of like, it's like a slow burn read. So I will, as I'm finishing the tetralogy, it's getting more into like Buddhism and stuff, which is harder for me to follow because I don't really know much about Buddhism. So I'll hopefully finish that, and if I finish both of those books before the plane ride back, I guess I'll have to buy more books when I'm in Colorado.
Well, I'm gonna say because that was another thing that I want to bring up about either the book cast or the book club or whatever we end up doing, is because also, again, you just said, you also gave me Coin Locker Babies to read. So it's like...
And that's pretty big. You know what? I think I know what I want to read for the book cast. Short story collection by Yukio Mishima. It'll introduce you to some older classic Japanese style. The only problem is it was hard for me to get. I actually had to buy a used library copy online because it was the only one I could find, but it was like $1, so that wasn't too bad.
But do you think they maybe even like that? Because that would be something perfect for like the Kindle.
You can't get it on Kindle.
Because
it's like a lesser known Japanese book, so we can maybe do that, or you know what? You know what I'll do for you, Spencer? Because Yukio Mishima, he could be a little dry at times, and obviously something written in the 40s or 50s is going to be a little, not just dated, but, what do you know about 40s, 50s Japan?
You're right.
I just saw, released on 420, I completely forgot. I was going to buy this, but I was like, I'll wait till I come back from vacation. That way, it doesn't get lost or something. Haruki Murakami just had a new short story collection come out.
Oh, yeah?
That would be a good jumping on point for you to try, to see if you like his style and stuff, because they have a bunch of his books. And his short stories are usually excellent and are very weird. He's the one who wrote that, it was like the reverse metamorphosis. It was like a cockroach becomes Gregor Samsa. Yeah. I think he wakes up as Gregor Samsa and he goes downstairs and he's a human. He's like, what the fuck?
This is gross.
Yeah, it was great. So, maybe that could be the book, depending on how long that is, but that'd be an interesting one.
And that'd be interesting too, because you said it's new, right?
Yeah, it just came out, so I haven't read it.
Yeah, you haven't read it either. And
it would be interesting for me to, because he's like in the 70s. He's like Stephen King, he's like in the 70s or so. But
because I can say, because like I almost asked, but I didn't want to sound dumb. I was gonna wait to after the episode, because sometimes when you start throwing out some of the authors' names, and like I can like the names I know are different, but I always have trouble associating the books to the name, and like because I know like because one of the guys you like read, isn't he dead, right?
That's Yukio Mishima.
Yeah, so like it's like I get the bios, like the names I can tell the different names apart, but associating stuff goes with what name.
Well, that kind of goes with any author if you haven't read any of their work too, let alone foreign ones. But yeah, that'll be worth checking out. So we'll look into that off air once we're done. I'll see how long that is and stuff, because that'd be fun. And they call him like the Stephen King of Japan because he's so popular and he's like worldwide famous. So a lot of our listeners might actually enjoy that, because while they do definitely love the classic literature such as Dracula, I don't know if that's necessarily our base. I don't have it.
Could you imagine if him and Stephen King got together, if they collaborated on something?
I don't know how that would work. He's a lot more literary than Stephen King.
Yeah.
Metaphor heavy, but a lot more, I don't know, it's hard to say. Stephen King's very fantastical in what goes on in his stories. Haruki Murakami's even more fantastical.
Yeah.
But it's so mundane in the way he does it. It's hard to explain. Like, could you imagine people getting like cocooned and turning into shit and going into cults and going into these caverns under the city that go into a dream world and all this shit? But it's also written in a way where it's like, I'm making spaghetti. Like, I can't even explain it. Like, it's like, how could somebody have all this crazy shit going on in one novel, and then it's also like very mundane, like people just making dinner and stuff?
Well, now, is it like all that crazy stuff? Is it like it's been so crazy for so long, and like that's just like the new normal? Everybody knows about the crazy cult that goes underground. We just let them stay there.
It's more like the main character gets involved in the most ridiculous shit that you could imagine, and just kind of doesn't care. Like, he's just like, you going to work? Like, you just going about your day and work, but it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm in this fucking dream world now. Or like, oh, I guess I have to fight these fucking mercenaries in World War II. Like, just whatever it is.
Better than work.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think it's Wind Up Bird Chronicles. There's like a flashback to World War II. And it's literally, I think it's like this Japanese guy. No, it's not the Japanese guys. Might be the good. I don't remember. But it's World War. Yeah, I think it's World War II. But anyway, some guy gets flayed in a field. Like, they cut all his skin off, and it's like really gruesome. But at the same time, it's just from like this very strange perspective of like the main character during that. And I don't know. You'd have to read his stuff just to see. I mean, it's almost like some kind of like Kafka-esque stuff where, you had these ridiculous scenarios, but they played out as they're normal. Because that was like Kafka's deal. It was like, oh, you woke up as a fucking cockroach, but, I mean, you're more worried about, oh, shit, now how am I going to go to work and make money? Like, that's what you'd be worried about if you're a big cockroach. So, yeah, we'll look into that. Anyway, thank you for listening. I didn't think this episode would be this long. If you want to check out our fiction, and hopefully this will be, next week is Hemingway episode, right? That's what's dropping next week. So this will be the following week. So it maybe Space War Story will be out there. Yeah. All I have to do is add some pictures to it. I don't know if you went back and read the edits or not to see if you approve. I wouldn't imagine you wouldn't, but You could do that if you really want to read Space War story. Space World story would be cool too.
Sequel.
Sorry. What was that story I came up with? It was like a name or something the other day. It was really ridiculous. And you're like, that's it. That's the title. It was the story I'm working on now. Fucking forget. It was like something about moisture in outer space or something.
The moist something.
Yeah, it was something very dumb. Must have not been that good, actually. If you want to hit us up on the old Twitter, you can at Drunk Pen Writing, Instagram, Facebook, Drunken Pen Writing. I think that's all the wisdom we have to impart on the listeners today. If you have any words you really hate and you don't put in your writing, or words that you really like that you might put too much in your writing, we would like to hear about it. You
or words that when you're reading something and you're just like, God damn this word again.
Yeah, so you just tweet at us just the word. We don't even have any context. I was like, what the fuck? Because I'll forget by then, too. I'm like, what is this? Why is this guy just yelling muckluck at me? What does that mean?
And that would be the thing that catches fire.
Yeah. like the surge.
Yeah.
Caught fire. We never did hashtag that, though, I don't think. Anyway, surge!